I want to get into talking about respect. Respect for other players, respect for the sport itself in a second when we come back. So we'll be back and think about that respect issue. So I'm here with Andrew Brunette, about to start his 13th full year in NHL with Chicago Blackhawks in the fall. And we're talking about the game of hockey, but we're also talking about the game of life. And respect seems to be an issue that everybody seems to be pointing to the NHL now, and even the players are starting to talk about there's a lack of respect for other players now, and that's where a lot of injuries are coming in. And people are starting to notice at the younger levels now that kids seem to be, they don't seem to respect the wellness or the health of other players. Like, there seems to be an awful lot of violence. Personally, I think the game was more violent back in the 60s and 70s. And when I can remember watching some of the players playing with the old Sudbury Wolves when I was in high school, and there were no helmets, and like there was some pretty brutal hockey, and there weren't the kind of penalties that we get today. The equipment is really advanced. The game seems to be more violent, but even soccer, basketball, like, it doesn't matter what you look at, there seems to be more violence. There doesn't seem to be as much respect. But I don't know if it's just that people are focusing on it more. Like, where you're playing, and you play every day, do you think that respect is diminishing? I know you think that you've got to respect your other players, and as a professional, you have followed the principle of no, you do respect the other players that you're playing against. But is respect losing ground, or is it still a pretty strong principle?
Yeah, I think at our level we lost a little bit. I think, I mean, there's all kinds of things that go into that. I think the league's gotten younger, for one. We've lost, through the salary cap era now, it's cheaper to plug in younger players, give them an opportunity. They're all trying to make a name for themselves. You know, you got 2 or 3 lines in the NHL that are veteran guys. The rest of them are just brought up, and they're, like I said, they're making a name for themselves. They don't probably have the respect. They haven't played long enough to understand the respect part. But I think for the most part, it maybe is diminished, but I don't think it's to the where I would say to the point where I would say that there's no respect in national hockey. I think it's diminished, and I think if you're looking, you know, you touched on the 60s, 70s, and you can even go on the 80s. It seemed, you know, I mean, I guess there was fighting. There's different things that made it the game. You know, I think there's always that edge in hockey. I think nowadays the players are bigger, faster. They hit harder. The equipment's harder. The boards are harder than they were. You know, I remember even being in the old buildings, the plexiglass would, you know, buffalo out or whatever, would just bounce back. You wouldn't even feel it. We went through a stretch there where it was like concrete when they went to seamless glass, and those, I mean, that takes a toll on your body, and injuries happen. But as for respect, I think when we step on the ice, I don't think there's a point where I don't look across and I don't respect you. But I do feel it has diminished a little bit.
But you're professionals.
Yeah.
And so as professionals, that's part of what being a professional is to respect the game and respect your opponents, and basically, if otherwise you're not much of a professional if you don't respect the people you're playing against. And I think for people just to kind of say, well, the reason that young kids don't have respect is because there's no respect at the professional level. I think what people have to understand is that the vast majority of players, the vast majority of time, demonstrate complete respect for each other. That they know why they're all making a living. They're not out there to take anyone's livelihood away from them. But what gets in the way when there are these violent incidents, like you yourself were, you know, had a concussion one year when you got blindsided. I mean, you can see the number of concussions is either going up or they're being reported.
Yeah. Well, yeah, good point. Probably more reported, and I'm sure they are going up. Also, we know a lot more than we knew about them. I mean, I remember having a concussion in junior way back when, where I got hit in the first period and woke up between the second and third, and they threw me back out there. So that, you know, not knowing, we just didn't know back then.
Yeah.
And the players didn't know, and nobody knew really the effects of it. And I think nowadays it's healthy that we do know. I mean, I've played with some guys, and we can talk about Sidney Crosby even this year missing that time. And I think, as we know more, it's going to be better for the players and better for hockey. As for, you talk about blindside hits, I think we've gotten away, the National Hockey League has a little bit, is that we've lost a little bit of the contact with some of the rule changes. It's not, the body contact was made to dislodge the opponent from the puck.
Yep.
And now it's turned into, if you don't have the puck, you're still fair game.
It's intimidation.
And I have a big problem with it. I don't think that's the way the game should be played. And we've kind of let that, we turned it into a gray area where you're now allowed to hit players when they don't have the puck. And that goes for me against the golden rules of hockey that have been there forever. You make body contact to dislodge somebody from the puck.
Yeah. I think in the old days when people didn't have helmets, there seemed to be more respect in that people stayed away from each other's heads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You didn't see the high shots. It was almost like because you don't have much protection, and I don't have much protection, we've got this unwritten rule. Now it almost seems like people they're just, you can't hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And the violence aspect or the speed. I heard Ken Dryden mention once that one of the biggest problems with hockey now at the high levels is that the shifts are too short. And in the old days, people used to stay out for 2 minutes,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and in 2 minutes, you couldn't go all around.
Yeah.
But in 40 seconds, all you were doing was you were just going like a train.
Mm-hmm.
And the collisions are great, but when your shifts were 2 minutes,
Yeah.
2.5 minutes, you said there were some players that you needed a hook to get them up. So they had to pace themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And when you watch the old style games, you watch the classic games on TV, you see the guys are out there for an awful long time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now it's like 25, 30 seconds and it's all out.
Yeah.
But when you get to respect, and I think this is a key principle or value that people generally will take from sport, is that most coaches and most volunteers and most organizers really try to emphasize that people should respect their opponents. They should